The main role of Nigel Farage's various parties in British politics has up to now been to pull the Conservatives to the right. UKIP was never a real contender for government, but by peeling off right-wing voters from the Conservatives, Farage pressured Cameron to offer an EU referendum. The Brexit Party then was also never a real contender for power, but its success in European elections in 2019 led the Tories to dump Theresa May in favour of Boris Johnson and, in the process, commit to a much harder form of Brexit than they otherwise would have pursued. Reform UK is different, though. So this Nigel Farage vehicle is consistently first in national polling. They have a real chance of becoming the largest party at the next general election. They're not just a party which is pulling a party looking to enter government to the right. Now, though, that means for the first time, they're having to contend with outriders to their right. So they're in the place that the Conservatives used to be. Restore Britain is a party founded by expelled Reform MP Rupert Lowe. In polling for the Makerfield by-election, Salvation have Labour's Andy Burnham on 43%, Reform on 40%, and Restore on 7%, meaning support for the new right-wing party could be the difference between victory and defeat for Reform. And pressure from Restore appears to already be having an effect on Reform policy. So Restore is dragging Reform to the right, just as Reform, or UKIP, or whoever, dragged the Tories to the right beforehand. Let's take a look at Robert Jenrick. So he's their economics spokesperson on Sky on the weekend.
I wonder if the problem for Reform is that you're going to need to go a bit further than you have suggested up until now. Maybe you need to go further as proposed by your former colleagues in Restore. Here's what they want. Let me show you what they're saying. They're saying that if a legally resident foreign national, and by the way, legally resident is quite important here, foreign national, if they can't do any of these things, speak English, they live in social housing, out they go. Are you attracted to any of these policies?
Well, most of those are Reform policy, have been Reform policy long before this party ever existed.
Is it actually Reform policy to deport someone who is legally resident but lives in social housing?
Well, what we're saying, in some cases, because what we're saying is that we're going to abolish ILR and make a much longer path to British citizenship. And so instead of having this baked-in guarantee to remain in our country...
Current government's going to do that.
It's not abolishing ILR. It's making a somewhat longer path to British citizenship. Under our policy, you'll have to keep applying. If you've got a job, if you meet the criteria, then you can stay in the country and you can work your way to being a British citizen. But let me just finish this.
Hang on, before you go, just to be clear,
then you will have to leave.
Are you saying to me that a foreign person who is legally resident but lives in social housing will be deported under a Reform government just because of that? They live in social housing.
Well, not exclusively because of that.
Well, that's what... But if you just said that's what you agreed with.
If they fail to meet our criteria because they're not in work or they're not working in as many hours, not earning enough money, then they won't be able to renew their work visa because ILR won't exist and they'll be asked to leave.
Oh, so you don't agree with that?
That is fair.
You don't agree with all of Restore's policies?
So the fact that Robert Jenrick didn't express total agreement with Restore was jumped on by far-right accounts on X. So Basil the Great, I mean, it sounds ridiculous. I'm reading out a tweet from Basil the Great, but it's an account with 300,000 followers. And so the account clipped part of that interview and said this: Robert Jenrick admits Reform UK will not deport foreign nationals living in social housing. Trevor Phillips showed him Restore Britain's deportation plans and was clear, quote, "You don't agree with Restore's policies. There are approx 500,000 social homes currently occupied by foreign nationals in the UK. Deport them all and give those homes to British people. Reform are just weak sauce. It's time to restore Britain." Now, you say, why am I showing you this tweet by Basil the Great? Well, it's shared by Elon Musk, which is why it gets 8 million views. He says, restore Britain. And in response to all of this heat on Twitter from very right-wing people, Robert Jenrick's allies in Reform didn't back him up, but rather agreed with his critics. So Zia Youssef is Reform's Home Affairs spokesperson. And he said this: Robert's answer is not Reform policy. As the person responsible for our deportation plan, I want to ensure people know where we stand. If a foreign national lives in social housing at taxpayer expense, they automatically fail our economic test and will be deported. So to clarify Reform's policy here, it's to say if you were born abroad and haven't yet got British citizenship, but you're living in social housing, which I think is I think it might be 7% of people in social housing fall into that category. There isn't going to be indefinite leave to remain. And if you're in social housing, that means you're not rich enough to qualify for a renewed work visa, so you get deported. That's the rather unpleasant policy they're proposing. I suppose the question I wanted to put to you, Aaron, was the more general one, where, obviously I really don't want Reform to win the next general election, but it's possible. And if they do, my hope is that they sort of, in a general election, feel like they have to moderate, because sort of the parts of the electorate that I suppose are swing voters between them and Labour perhaps, or them and the Tories, aren't, as crazy as some people on the internet are. But this is, a worrying sign that we might see Reform actually getting pulled as much to the right as they get pulled to the centre.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, people are talking about Elon Musk pushing Restore on X, and I think a big part of Restore's surprisingly high profile. Let's say they keep their deposit in Makerfield, for instance, and they're the difference between Reform winning or not. X is a big part of that, but so is Facebook. Rupert Lowe has 1.2 million followers on Facebook. Just go on his page and see the engagement. It's really, really striking, really astonishing. And I can see the argument. As somebody who's a political animal, I love radical politics on the left, not the right. As somebody who's a political animal, I could look at the arguments made by some people about backing Restore and not Reform in this by-election, because ultimately you want an outrider to keep that party going in one particular direction, and people would make similar arguments on the left. So I totally get it. If you're a radical, that's probably what you want to do. And it seems to be happening. I think by-elections are uniquely difficult for Reform because they're pulling them in all these different directions. And they clearly don't do very well when the spotlight is being shone on one particular candidate. I think in local elections and general elections, it's a different story. It's much easier for them. But clearly, this issue with Restore and them being pulled in various places and the fragmentation of their vote, and with by-elections, with that media spotlight, the media savviness of Rupert Lowe, the extent to which the radical right online is so heavily mediatized, particularly on X, I do think it means they're going to really struggle with by-elections. I really think they're going to really struggle with by-elections. Even if they win a majority of 150 in the next general election, I don't think you'll be able to ascertain that from by-elections.
I mean, what's also kind of worrying here is Zia Yusuf feels like he has to respond to Basil the Great on Twitter, right? Which is an anonymous far-right account, which is saying, Reform aren't as far-right as you guys think. They actually don't want to deport enough people. And instead of feeling like he's able to ignore that, Zia Yusuf, who wants to be the next Home Secretary, quote tweets it, says, actually, no, my colleague is wrong. Basil the Great, don't worry, is essentially what that's saying.
The future Chancellor of the Exchequer managing this country and its economy, representing this country at the G7, fear not, Basil. I'm gonna embarrass them in front of you because you're right and they're wrong. And one more thing, Michael, this policy. I mean, if you don't want these people living in the social housing, you can agree or disagree with that, then just don't have them living in the social housing. I mean, the idea that you deport them.
It doesn't make any.
So let's say this, I mean, again, and I'm not suggesting this is all of these people. Let's say you've been a nurse and you've contributed to this country for 25 years. You're a West Indian heritage and you happen to be living in somewhere in Zone 3 in social housing and you happen to not be in work now. And as a result, you'd lose the housing, you'd be deported back to Jamaica. I mean, it doesn't feel that kind of policy will survive impact with enforcement. It's a bit like 20 mile per hour limits, right? The minute that 20 mile per hour speed limit goes back to 30 somewhere and a child is hit and dies, you're the bad guy. It's one of those, it sounds good in theory, maybe for the audience that it's intended for, but I just don't see how once it's enforced, how it still commands much consent.